So this video will be sort of on reenactor etiquette. So this is just pointing out a few things that I've noticed, more so with beginners than people who are more experienced. And the first one is if you go to your first practice, or practices after that, all that stuff, and you get to know people and everything, obviously you're not going to have your own gear to use, and the group that you go to practice with might not have very much loaner gear, or any real training gear anyway. And so you're going to have to borrow people's things to be able to use. And one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes new people just assume they can use things, and so they'll see, let's say this sword sitting on the table, and it's not currently being used, and they're really eager to get in there and fight and all that stuff. So they just grab it and go onto the field to train, which it's kind of a thing that happens. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that the person that owns the sword, or in the case of this one, the person that cares for it, might need it to go train somebody, or might need it to go and fight themselves, or just they don't want the undue wear and tear on it, like this one that I'm currently fixing for a friend. He just doesn't want to have to go through the hassle of having to clean it up after somebody's abused it, more or less. So he wants to make sure he knows who is using it, and making sure that they have the skill to treat it properly when they're fighting. And it's also something like this can cost anywhere from $150 to $600 to $1,000, depending on what you're using. Not that anybody's going to be using a $1,000, $2,000 Albion on the field, but Albion does make I think it's a skirmish line. They're about $650 or $600 for a decent reenactment Viking sword. And so with that kind of investment, you want to keep an eye on it to know where it is at all times. The other thing too is sometimes new people don't know that you don't touch the blade, more or less. As Matt Easton in one of his recent videos said, if you're constantly touching it, it's not too much of a problem. If you know that you've touched it and you're going to clean it later, it's not too much of a problem. But if it sits with the oils from somebody's hand, or even if they touch their face and then touch it, you can end up with some issues. And if the person doesn't know that somebody used their sword and touched the blade, they can end up with all kinds of problems. That's what happened to this one. Not quite the same. I was on the display table at an event, and a little kid actually grabbed it and held it by the blade, and the guy who owns this sword didn't notice that, and he cleaned it, I think, that evening or the next morning, but it was too late, and the fingerprint had actually etched into the blade. And I don't know, maybe that kid was just particularly acidic, but he's actually cleaned the blade with a wire wheel on a bench grinder, and it still can't get that etch mark out. So it's just one thing that that you have to sort of keep tabs on, and so that's why it's very good it's very important to ask before you use something, as well as you don't know if that weapon is actually safe or not, unless you're more experienced and you're able to do a safety check. But even then, you probably have your own kit, or if you want to play with something because it's this interesting thing that you want to use, or something you've never used before, you definitely want to ask so people know what's going on. And same thing with gloves and helmets. Those are sort of personal safety equipment, and some people don't like to share helmets just because they don't know what's on somebody's head and things like that, and so or they're just sensitive to that kind of thing. Same thing with gloves. A lot of people don't like to share gloves because they don't know what's on somebody's hands. You could touch any number of things, and some people work in different fields where if they get sick, they're kind of, for lack of a better word, screwed. And so it's very important to check before you just take something. Another thing is at events, you'll be asked questions by the public, and if you don't know something, find somebody in your group that does, because there's usually somebody around who's more experienced. And if nobody knows it, don't just make something up. It looks better to the public if you are able to actually just say, hey, we don't know that. That's an interesting thing. Maybe that's something you could research if you're really interested. And then you remember that question, you go home and you research that and you find that answer, then you know more. Just making something up, you tend to make the thing up, you say what you say, the member of the public goes away without any new knowledge. It's sort of just they have this now false information floating around. And you tend to forget what question was asked, so you don't go home and look it up and you don't learn more. If you go, wait, I don't know that, then it's something that sticks in your mind that you need to research, you need to learn more on that topic. So that's a very important thing too, and it's just not spreading false information. And same thing goes with the creation of kit. If it can't be backed up, don't make it. Do as much research as you can. If it's something you really, really want, do as much research as you can to be able to prove that the Vikings had it, and this is what it looked like, and this is what it did, and all these things. But just make sure that what you do and what you make is documentable. Either, preferably, a couple of archaeological examples, or if there's only one archaeological example, then a number of sources that back up that is what that is. And also, if you can get any kind of saga and mythological reference, or within that time period as well. There were a lot of Eastern sources that were either Arabic or Islamic, or there were some English monastery or English monks and stuff that wrote about the Vikings a lot. And if you can back that up that way, that is great as well. And then I think about kit as well. If you look at somebody's garb, whether they're in your group or not, and you see that something is wrong to what you know, it's best not to just go, hey, that's wrong, whatever. A good tack that you can take is you can actually just go, hey, what sources do you have for this piece? And kind of, figure out if they have any source for it or not, whether it's right or wrong. And if you are in a position of authority to be able to tell them to change that, then do so. If you aren't, then you know for yourself that that's wrong and that's not something you should be doing. So it's really best to not tell people that they're wrong. It's to make them think about it and go, okay, maybe this can be changed. Or if you are going to tell them flat out that they're wrong, you need to be able to back up why they're wrong, and it's very helpful to be able to just give them a and here's what you can do to make it better, and that's sort of a good way to go about it. It makes people a little more happy that you've done the research, or you've done the backup thing for them, so that they don't have to start from square one after they've already invested so much into this and all that stuff. So that's kind of just a couple thoughts. It's kind of like the reenactorism video I did. There are a bunch more, a bunch more things that could be talked about in this. And if you guys have any, feel free to comment. That'd be greatly appreciated. Maybe I'll make a second video of it as more things come up. So yeah, thank you for watching.